Here they come. What's up, gang? People are so weird. Some of you guys just ask the weirdest random questions, like right off the bat. Are those books fake? No. All right. We're on here on the Carbon Facebook, the Carbon YouTube, and the Carbon Facebook group, and I'm on Instagram. This live is for Carbon Diet Coach, my nutrition coaching app. If you guys aren't familiar, I'll talk about it here in a little bit. But before we get into that, I'll take one question. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind dropping them in this question box so I can pull them up on the screen, that'd be awesome. Let me see if we got any in there right now. None yet. Facebook, YouTube, feel free to throw some up yourselves. Guys, you got to listen to instructions. If you're on Instagram, drop them in the question box. Still waiting for people to drop it in the question box. Instructions, folks. Do not fail the assignment. You got this. Oh, here we go. Let's see here. Man. Is oatmeal bad for breakfast? So this came about because Paul Saladino did what he does, which is go crazy, making insane claims based on really thin data. I just did a post kind of about this morning, which basically I was like, so what he's saying is don't eat oatmeal because there's phytates in it, and the phytates can leach minerals from you. So if you guys aren't aware, in any single food, literally any food, I can find a compound that in high amounts would be very toxic to the body. I can also find compounds in literally any food that if I fed them in high amounts, they would have beneficial effects. Like I can turn any food into a superfood. And I had said to people, or I had said to another scientist one day, you know, I bet I could convince people to eat shit, like eat poop, based on the same template that these people like Saladino use. And so this morning I had the idea that I was going to do that for a post. And I had no idea, like, okay, let's see what compounds are in poop. And sure enough, one of the most prevalent short chain fatty acids found in human feces is butyrate. And if you look at research, I've pointed out a bunch of studies showing that butyrate increases insulin sensitivity, can improve fat oxidation, reduce inflammation. And then you said, and people and humans who are low in bacteria that produce butyrate actually tend to be more obese and more insulin resistant. So therefore, eating poop is a superfood, except for one simple problem. All the studies I cited on butyrate were in vitro, which is in a petri dish, or in rodents. And they were using a dosage that would equate to you needed to consume about 50 to 100 pounds of poop per day. So this is exactly what people like Saladino do with oatmeal, which is, look at these phytates in there. First of all, they're not in high enough amounts to actually cause this leaching that he's talking about. Second off, why don't we just look at studies where people eat oatmeal and they examine the markers of health? There's hundreds of these studies. And so what do they show when people eat oatmeal? Do they get unhealthy? Do they get more inflamed? No, they have lower inflammation. They have lower prevalence of obesity. They have better insulin sensitivity. So this whole shtick of him and people like him, it is a boilerplate. They all do the same thing, whether it's carnivore, intermittent fasting, crazy vegans, they all do the same stuff. Again, There's no good or bad foods. Foods exist on a spectrum from, hey, you can eat more of these foods and more often, to you have to use smaller portion sizes less often. So cakes, cookies, whatnot, eat smaller portion sizes less often. Fruits, vegetables, lean meats, eat bigger portion sizes more often. Now, and people will say, well, you can't tell me that sweets are healthy. Maybe not in the traditional sense, but have you ever been around somebody with an eating disorder? Most people, I can tell you, they actually cause more damage to themselves through the stress that they induce worrying about all this little stuff. Like, there's actually good data that psychological stress is probably worse for you than any of the small shit that you're worrying about. And so, yeah, if somebody gets to the point where like they can consume a little bit of a sweet thing and it like, you know, like makes them happy and they feel a sense of community because they're doing it with friends or whatever, and they can do it in moderation, yeah, that can be healthier. Like, what's less healthy? Someone who has a cookie every once in a while and fits it into their nutritional requirements and has an overall balanced diet, or someone who stresses the hell out all the time about every single food they eat and is constantly in inner turmoil about that? I can tell you who's healthier, and it's not the person who always eats clean. That's one of the reasons with our app, Carbon Diet Coach, you know, we don't, no food's off limits. There's no one way of eating. It's not low carb. It's not fasting. It's not vegan. It's all those options are on the table. You can do any of those with our app. It's all about what provides the best adherence and long-term results. So for those of you guys who aren't familiar, our app, I was involved in creating our app and basically writing the algorithm for the coaching portion of it. And so basically what it'll do when you sign up is you put in your information and it will give you customized nutrition recommendations based on your goals, your individual metabolism, and your dietary preferences. And then as you progress, the app will actually adjust your nutrition recommendations to optimize your response. So it's less than $10 a month, like for custom nutrition coaching. So make sure you guys check it out. It's at Carbon Diet Coach. Who here has used Carbon? Feel free to feel free to let me know what you guys thought of it. Let's see if we got some questions over here from Facebook or YouTube. What is your holiday eating strategy this year? I don't stress about the holidays. I don't try to use fat during the holiday, or I don't try to lose fat during the holidays. I just focus on maintenance. And I structure my nutrition and I structure like how I kind of plan things around my events. And this is a great segue into the calorie planner feature on Carbon Diet Coach. And I'll show you guys. Actually, I can't show you because my phone's right here. But basically, with the diet planner feature, you can go in and you can make it so you're not eating the same amount every day. If let's say you have a day where you have an event coming on, and let's say your average daily calorie intake is 2,500 calories, you can, like, let's say that like Christmas, you want more calories to have more flexibility. You can increase the calories that day to 3,500 calories. And then it will automatically adjust the rest of your days so that your weekly calorie budget is still the same. Because that's what we're really looking at here, is like a weekly budget. And so it's a fantastic feature. I use it all the time. The other great thing you can use it for is if you have an oops or something like that where you overconsume one day and you didn't mean to. Now it's not like, okay, well, you screwed up. It's like, all right, just go into the calorie planner, adjust, put in how many calories you ate, and it will adjust the rest of your day so you can still be compliant for the rest of the week. So like I said, it's an absolutely fantastic tool. I love it. I use it all the time. I use it every single week, especially because I also, I tend to like put higher calorie days on days I train. I'm not saying that's better than like doing it the same way every day, but I just personally prefer that. All right, let's see. Have been using Carbon daily for 2 years. And it's a great tool, but an invaluable asset to me. Down 20 pounds using Carbon. Awesome. Love hearing these stories. Thank you guys so much. Raymond, yeah, you can drop your question right there on Facebook. All right, let's see what we got on Instagram here. Any thoughts on inflammation help with the carnivore diet? So this is a claim that often gets made, that the carnivore diet is best for inflammation and autoimmune disorders. First off, these claims are unfounded because there's no research on the carnivore diet other than a self-reported internet survey that the carnivore advocates like prop up as the greatest study in the history of mankind. Somehow, they completely overlook like really great 20-year cohort studies with like 100,000 people, but an internet survey is the greatest study of all time. Now, first off, it's important to understand what inflammation actually is, because a lot of people who do the carnivore diet and they say, oh, my inflammation went down. Most of those people have a limited ability to take in certain types of vegetables without getting GI distress. Okay. A lot of these people have FODMAP sensitivities, and they basically, I see you, Brian. What's up, bro? And when they cut out vegetables, they feel better. They didn't feel better because carnivore is magic. They feel better because carnivore is basically an elimination diet. And if they'd actually just tried to add back in different vegetables one by one, they could see which ones actually were causing them GI distress. But GI distress is not inflammation. I mean, it can be localized inflammation. It can be localized pain and bloating. But inflammation, when people go, oh, my inflammation went down or my inflammation went up. Really? You had your CRP measured? You had your IL-6 measured? You had your IL-1 measured? No, you didn't. You didn't. Most of them didn't. Okay? Now, is there, in theory, could you reduce your inflammation on a carnivore diet? Absolutely. Some people can, because if it causes you to lose 50 pounds, yeah, like adipose tissue is pro-inflammatory. So if you lose a significant amount of body weight, your inflammation markers will go down. But they would have gone down regardless of the type of diet you used. And the carnivore diet is simply, I'm sorry, is it healthier than the standard American diet where you're eating a bunch of junk food and overweight and obese? Yeah, it's better than that. It helps you lose weight. Is it better than, like, I don't know, eating lean meats with vegetables and fruits? No, it's freaking not. Okay. I can't believe in 2023 we have a movement against fruit and vegetables. This is actually what this is little children who didn't like eating vegetables grow up, somehow become physicians. I don't know. I mean, there are some turds that just won't flush. And now, since they don't like eating vegetables and fruits, these children tell people that they're toxic and that meat heals and all this kind of stuff. Listen, I am all for high quality, lean animal protein. I'm all for that. Absolutely has beneficial effects in certain aspects. But telling people not to eat fruits and vegetables is just unbelievably epic stupidity. All right, let me see here. Another one, a question we get sometimes is, how do you navigate weight fluctuations? And actually, like, this is something when we were building the app, people really underestimate this. A lot of people aren't even aware of this. Your weight can fluctuate day to day. And if you're not tracking it consistently, you can believe that, oh, I'm eating in a calorie deficit and not losing weight. Because, like, let's say, like, my average body weight right now is about 208, but I will fluctuate anywhere between 205 and 212. Okay. So, like, if I weighed in, let's say at a low weight when I started a diet and I was like 206, right? and then I don't weigh in until the following weekend and I'm 209, or I don't weigh in until the following week, like one day, and I'm 209, I would think, oh my God, this calorie deficit's not working. But the reality is, if I had tracked every single day, my average might have been down by a pound or two. And I just, the day before I weighed in, maybe I had more sodium, maybe I was retaining more water. And so that's why Carbon Diet Coach doesn't just use one weigh-in. Lets you log your weight every single day, and then it will take the average of those weights, as well as doing what's called our weight trend feature, which basically like gets rid of outliers and makes it much, much more accurate, because day-to-day changes in body weight are much more driven by fluid dynamics than they are by actual changes in mass, whereas week-to-week average changes are much more dictated by changes in actual body mass. All right, let's see here. Did I listen to the Hubman podcast with Lustig? I'm about an hour in, and I've got about 5 pages of notes. Lustig definitely said some things that I do agree with, such as eating fiber is a good thing, and that eating fruits and vegetables are a good thing. But he also made some claims that are absolutely not supported by data. Absolutely not. Like, he's very smart. He knows the biochemistry, but he really misses the forest through the trees on a lot of stuff. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to breaking some of that down. But I do like Andrew. I think Andrew is, he doesn't always get it right, but he always tries to get it right. And he's very, very open to changing his mind. Like, actually, that's how I got on his podcast originally, was I actually like kind of called him out, like respectfully, but called him out. And he responded really well to it. He was like, oh, I wasn't aware of that data. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. I'd love to have you on the show sometime. And that's how I actually ended up being on the show. So, I mean, really, that's always impressive when somebody can admit that they were wrong about something or weren't aware of something. Like I do, even if I like don't like a claim somebody makes, I really respect people who can admit that they got something wrong. I think that that is the hallmark of a really, really good scientist. So I do. Oh, sorry. I'm actually holding my phone right now because it's charging, because it was almost dead. And I thought I was going to be able to plug it in and have a holder, and it is not staying in place. So here we are. All right. Let's see what other questions we got. When is the debate with Gary Brucka? So Gary offered to debate and then had us get in touch with his team, and has since rescinded that offer. So I'm hopeful that he will come back around and agree to have a discussion. But as of now, actually he didn't. His I guess this person called himself his chief of staff, and they said that he was no longer interested, or that they were no longer interested. So we'll see. I'm not that surprised, quite frankly. Ozempic, yes or no? My endocrinologist says she wants to prescribe it to me if I want. So this is a very emotionally charged question. Or this tends to be an emotionally charged topic, because you have the fitness influencers who come out and are like, no, big pharma. These are the same fitness influencers who are like, you're lazy if you use a weight loss medication. But then they're like, use my discount code to buy my fat burner. So Ozempic, semaglutide, the class of GLP-1 mimetics, especially tirzepatide, very, very effective in helping produce fat loss, in reducing appetite. In fact, that's how it produces fat loss. It's not magic. They are the most powerful appetite suppressants pretty much that we've found. I've spoken with a few people who have used them, and you are not hungry. Most people are not hungry. In fact, I think the average weight loss is like 15 to 20% of body weight. and people's insulin sensitivity improves, all that kind of stuff. So listen, if you're somebody who's really been struggling and you struggle with appetite and you struggle with being able to be consistent on a nutrition plan, then perhaps one of these GLP-1 mimetics would help you. There's been concern about lean mass loss. I don't think that there's nothing inherent about GLP-1 mimetics that's going to cause loss of lean mass. In fact, if you look at how much lean mass subjects lose who are on GLP-1 mimetics, it's actually very similar to people who just diet and don't resistance train. And I think what may happen is people on GLP-1 mimetics just aren't choosing protein because they're so full. They feel so full. So if you're prioritizing protein, still prioritizing good, healthy food choices, I think GLP-1 mimetics for a lot of people can be really helpful. So now, if somebody has to lose 5 or 10 pounds and you take like semaglutide, I think that's ridiculous. But for people with a lot of weight to lose and who are struggling, I think it can be really helpful. Let's see over here. Okay. Question from Facebook. I've been on maintenance for the holiday season, but plan on switching to fat loss after. I will be doing fat loss sprints. And in parentheses, I watched a video of you talking about this method. I've been consistently tracking my fiber intake. Should I keep fiber the same even with the reduction in calories, or does it even matter? Well, it does matter, but with fiber, it's hard to consume the same amount of fiber when you're in a calorie deficit. So I would just say get as much fiber as you reasonably can. But it'll be hard to get the same amount of fiber if you're in a calorie deficit, just because you're going to be consuming less carbohydrates overall. Okay. Let's see what else we have. Best diet for perimenopause women. Whether you're perimenopause, premenopause, postmenopause, there's no evidence that a specific diet works better than another diet. This gets me in a lot of hot water, along with when I say that there is no best like workout program for women around their period, or that they don't need to modify it necessarily around their period. I think people like to feel like there's some sort of special thing to do, but there's no evidence that menopause really changes metabolism that much. There doesn't appear to be an effect on your basal metabolic rate. There doesn't appear to be an effect on most things. Now, what it may affect is if you're menopausal, you may have less energy because you just don't feel as good. And so you may spontaneously move less, and perhaps your total daily energy expenditure decreases. But there's no evidence that like one diet is superior to another. There's just not. Whenever I say that about like periods too, that you don't need to necessarily modify. Like if you're on your period and you don't feel as good to train, like by all means auto-regulate and like go a little bit lower intensity. Like that's totally fine. But I would say that whether you're on your period or not, like if you don't feel good going in for a day, then auto-regulate. But like this whole, like you have to program completely around your menstrual cycle and stuff. There's just no evidence to support that. And when I say stuff like that, women come in and go, you don't have a period. You don't get to comment on this. Like, I don't know. It's just, people just get so emotional about everything. And it would be really nice if we could just talk about data and not turn this into religion. Let's see. Thank you, the whole Carbon Diet and the whole Carbon Diet Coach team. The app is amazing. Awesome. Glad you love it. So I'm going to unplug this thing because I'm tired of holding it, and we're at 42%. So we should be good for the rest of the live. Hang on one second. Okay. Favorite healthy breakfast. Whatever allows you to be consistent and sustain the calorie level conducive to your goals with adequate protein and fiber. How's that for a sexy clickbait title? All right, let's see if we got another. Guys, remember, if you want to, hang on. That is not the question I wanted. Remember to drop your questions in the question box on Instagram. Don't put them in the comments, please. Okay, I'm getting a lot of questions about this study. So this is based on a study out of Luc van Loon's lab with Jorn Trommelen in the Netherlands. Very, very good lab. We have communicated quite a bit. Jorn was doing his PhD, I think around the same time I was doing my PhD. We do have a little bit of differing thoughts on things. So basically, the research has suggested that the anabolic cap to a meal is around 20 to 25 grams of protein at a meal, depending, like for a high quality protein source. This new study, and that's because protein synthesis would be maxed out in response to that. But those are only short-term studies, and at least like they're looking at like 0 to 6 hours post-protein ingestion. But then this new study comes out, and they looked at people who resistance trained, and then they looked at people who ate 0 grams of protein, 25 grams of protein, and 100 grams of protein. And it was a really, really well done study. Like, this would have been a very, very difficult study to conduct. And this is right, like literally in my wheelhouse. Where is it? Up there, my PhD thesis, that little blue thing right next to my degrees, was on skeletal muscle protein synthesis with different quality protein sources and leucine, and we were using stable isotope tracers, and this is exactly what that methodology is. So I am intimately familiar with how these studies are done. The study they did, the people that they would have had there would have been in lab for probably 16 hours. They would have taken probably a dozen blood draws and would have taken like four chunks of their actual tissue out, like actual biopsies. So this was a very, very involved study. And what they found was that 100 grams of protein and 25 grams of protein, the 100 grams of protein at that one time increased muscle protein synthesis, the area under the curve, over 12 hours, much greater than 25 grams of protein. Now, here's the caveats to that. My research, actually, and this was in rodents, so take that for what it's worth, but most of my research was validated in humans later. And rodents are actually a really good model of protein metabolism. My research showed kind of the opposite, that protein synthesis runs for a defined period of time. And even though amino acids may stay elevated in the blood, protein synthesis still comes back down to baseline by about 3 hours post-ingestion. So there's that study in contrast. There's also a study by Bohe back from 2001 where they infused essential amino acids for 6 hours in humans. And they saw protein synthesis increase up to like 60 to 90 minutes. And then by 2 hours, it was back down and never went back up again. And so the new study is kind of in odds with the previous literature on this topic. And I think there's 2 reasons to explain that. The first is they did a pretty demanding resistance training program before that. And so when you're resting, when there is no there's no big increase in protein turnover, then perhaps 20 to 30 grams does cap the system out. Perhaps it does. But if you have created a large demand for protein, and we know that a resistance training bout in relatively untrained people can increase protein synthesis for 16 hours and more, perhaps you are able to basically raise the threshold at a meal for effective protein intake, okay? The other aspect to this is the protein source that was used was casein. And casein is a relatively slow digesting protein. It's actually a very slow digesting protein. And we know that in the short term, like short-term protein synthesis studies, that casein does not max out the protein synthesis response at like 20 to 30 grams, that it's more like 40 or 50. And that's probably because it does not cause a really rapid increase in aminoacidemia in the blood. And so I would say I would have been very interested to see if they would have tried like 50 or 60 grams of protein, like an intermediate amount of protein, because I suspect that maybe then there wouldn't have been differences between 50 and 100 grams, because I don't think 25 grams would quite max out the system, whereas 100 grams would. But I think 50 grams would have too. So I don't think this question is as open and shut as everyone thinks it is. And many people have used this to say, see, protein distribution doesn't matter at all. Again, in one of my studies, we actually showed differences in muscle mass, again, in rats, using exact same protein intake, exact same type of protein, but one was, relatively equally distributed across 3 meals per day, and the other group was getting like basically 70% of their protein at dinner. And we showed that the group getting the relatively even distribution had more muscle mass at the end of the study. Now, it wasn't a big difference. It was like 5 to 10%. But I think the new study's great, but I'm not ready to make like really big claims based on that. But I think, I'll walk back slightly, which is, and I have said this recently, your total protein intake during the day is the dominant factor by far. That is the dominant factor determining, your anabolic response, other than resistance training. But I still do think protein distribution may matter. It probably just doesn't matter a lot. It's something I'd probably really only care that much about in like elderly people because elderly people are anabolic resistant, and in people who are basically looking to be as jacked as humanly possible. All right. Another question here. How do let me take this off. So this is a write-in. How do I navigate being sick or injured while using carbon and the coach? When should I back off? When should I push through? How to handle my diet during this time? So if you're sick, what I tell people is, as far as exercise goes, as far as resistance training goes, if it's just like a head cold, going in and doing like a relatively like decent session is probably fine. If it's like you're running a fever, then you should rest. So what to do with your nutrition? There's not really any like direct studies on this, so I'm speculating. But what I would say is probably just eat at maintenance, because if you're in a deficit, it may impair your recovery. But you probably don't want to be in a surplus because you're not going to be exercising. So maybe, not effective for lifting, and you don't want to gain extra body fat. So usually I tell people just kind of eat at maintenance. So you can set the app to maintenance, or, if you're in a fat loss phase, you don't want to go to maintenance. You could probably still be in a slight deficit, but again, you may like delay your recovery slightly. Somebody asked if I'm ever going on Rogan. I was on Rogan, episode 1176. Y'all new to this game. You ain't OGs. Yeah, somebody called me Dwayne. I've been called Dwayne, Dane, Wayne, Blaze. Kind of like Blaze though. Don't know where they got that from. Let's see here. Hydrogen water. Absolute buffoonery. Water already has hydrogen in it. We need you to debate Eddie Abu. That would be like Tom Brady playing pickup football against middle schoolers. MyFitnessPal versus Carbon Diet Coach. So MyFitnessPal is just a tracker. That's it. It will give you an initial calculation, but it's not very custom. Carbon Diet Coach is a coach. It is a coach. It is not a tracker. Okay. It has a tracker in it as part of the app, but the primary function of the app is to provide customized nutrition recommendations based on your goal, your individual metabolism, and your dietary preference. And so, it gives you those recommendations, and then adjust those recommendations based on how you progress, just like a coach would. MyFitnessPal doesn't do any of that. The best thing about MyFitnessPal is it's got a huge database of foods. By the way, not verified. If you've ever gone on MyFitnessPal, like you can type in a lasagna and you can find like a lasagna on there that has like 100 calories. Like it's just kind of a crapshoot. Please put the questions in the question boxes, and guys, make sure you ask you have to ask a question in a way that will give you an answer. So if you say thoughts on X, it's probably not going to get answered because I have a lot of thoughts on stuff. Be specific and you'll get a specific answer. Ahmed on Facebook. Oh, what's up, Ahmed? We go way back, like, man, probably 20 years back on the OCB message boards. When in a calorie deficit, does sugar consumption really matter if you are eating in a deficit and meeting your protein and fiber targets? Second question, does that need to change when switching to a calorie surplus? Third questions, I don't want to diet during the holidays. Do I have to? No to your third question. You absolutely don't have to. As for your first question, this is going to get a lot of people angry, but the fact of the matter is, do you need to worry about sugar consumption? You need to worry about it insofar as if you're eating a high sugar diet, it's difficult to be satisfied because usually diets high in sugar are going to be low in fiber and low in bulk. So if you're eating a high sugar diet, you may not be very satiated. But there have been numerous studies, and we're talking about probably like on the level of dozens, where they equate calories and vary the amount of sugar, and they see no difference in fat loss or weight loss. In fact, there was one really well done study that Surwitt et al., where they provided all the meals to participants for the entire period of the study. And they ate the exact same amount of macros. The only difference was the high sugar group was getting about 110 grams of sugar per day, and the low sugar group was getting 10 grams of sugar a day or somewhere around that. And both groups lost almost exactly the same amount of weight, almost exactly the same amount of body fat. All their health markers improved to a similar extent. The only thing that was different, both groups improved their LDL cholesterol. The low sugar group improved their LDL cholesterol just a slight bit more. And that's probably because their fiber intake was higher, and fiber has been shown to reduce LDL cholesterol. So in terms of calorie per calorie, I don't worry about sugar. Because if sugar was really that bad, I mean, you got to worry about apples and bananas and all that kind of stuff. But what do those things come with? They come with dietary fiber. So it's less about keeping sugar down. It's more about keeping fiber up and satiety. So yeah, I don't worry about sugar that much. Does that need to change when switching to a calorie surplus? There are so few studies looking at calorie surplus that I can't really answer that directly because we don't really have direct evidence. Oh, sorry. Oh. But if you inject me with truth serum, I would tell you that I don't think it matters. when are you going to do a debunking on Gary Brecka's appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast? All right, I want to clear this up real quick. So, guys, when I did the debunking of the Paul Saladino appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast, that was a 3-hour podcast. It took me 10 hours to listen to it because I had to stop every time a claim was made, write down the claim with the timestamp. Then I had to write up my addressing each individual claim. Then I had to cite it. The entire thing probably took me 30 to 40 hours, okay? So I'm afraid I can't just stop every time a charlatan goes on a podcast and drop my entire life and devote an entire work week to debunking a podcast. I was going to do that with the Gary Brecka podcast, but then Gary offered to debate me, and I figured, okay, well, that'll be great. And then 2 days ago, his team went back on that and no longer is, they said they're no longer interested in debating. Actually, they said it's not the energy they want to bring into 2024. So you can take from that whatever you want. But same thing with Lustig's appearance on Hubman. I mean, I really do my best to address a lot of this stuff, but it's like I've only got so much time, and I've got 2 kids. I've got employees. I've got stuff that's more important than trying to spend 40 hours breaking down a podcast. Maybe when I have more time on my hands, I can devote to doing that. But I think, I really think it is incumbent on many of you all to just be skeptical. Just be so skeptical. Unfortunately, when something fits our bias, our level of skepticism is down here. It's non-existent. We're like, oh, yep, I want to believe that, so it must be true. Okay. But then when something doesn't fit our bias, our level of skepticism is up here. And so what I would ask you to do is question your own beliefs. Question your own beliefs. Question what you believe to be true. I spend a lot of time trying to debunk what I believe to be true. This new protein study is a great example of that. I read that and I was like, well, I might have to walk back some of my statements. I never made strong statements about protein distribution, but I still want to be as scientifically accurate as possible. So yeah, I think that's really important. Anyways, all right, guys, thank you so much for watching and tuning into this live. Really appreciate it. If you have not checked out Carbon Diet Coach, please check it out, our nutrition coaching app. It is absolutely fantastic. I use it personally, and I compete on a world level in powerlifting, and I use it and I have to make a weight class for powerlifting, and I have used it for 4 years, and it absolutely nails it every single time, which, I mean, I did help design the algorithm. So so yeah, please go check it out. You can see them at Carbon Diet Coach, or you can go to joincarbon.com to sign up. Again, less than $10 a month. It really is a no-brainer. You guys have seen some of the Carbon members commenting in here. It is an absolutely fantastic tool. You can't do better for the money. Highly recommend it. As always, I really appreciate you guys tuning in, and thank you so much for spending some time with me. Peace.